Good morning. Hope you had a great 4th of July weekend. It was an important time for us to stop as a country and remember those words. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. Those words uttered by Thomas Jefferson and by Washington, Franklin, and all of our forefathers really helped to change the world and created a nation where people could be free. However, we also know that when they said we believe that all men are created equal, they really did all mean all men, all white men. Certainly didn't apply to women, didn't apply to the slaves brought from Africa, all black people who were living here in the United States. No, we've had to struggle for more than 250 years to really understand that statement of all people are created equal. You go all the way back to Jesus, though, 2,000 years before, and we hear Jesus say, the greatest commandment is that you should love the Lord your God with your heart and mind, soul, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. And when Jesus said love your neighbor as yourself, he actually meant all people, no exceptions. He told us the story of the Good Samaritan immediately following that commandment. The story of a Samaritan and a Jew, people who lived in different countries, different nationalities, looked different, worshiped different, and they were called to be neighbors to one another. We see in Jesus' ministry how he always treats women with respect and a sense of equality, unlike the society around him. No, Jesus really meant love your neighbor, no exceptions. And we started to see that lived out in America beginning in 1776, but we've really still had to struggle with how to live that out fully as these years have gone by. One of the ways that we can really see how we struggled and yet we've made progress is with the fact that this is the 100th anniversary of the National Negro League. It's the National Negro Baseball League, and this is the 100th anniversary. It was started back in 1920, 100 years ago, by a man named Rube Foster. Rube Foster wanted to help African Americans get to play baseball. You see, the owners of the National Baseball League, well, they all had agreed that they would not have blacks on their teams. So there were no blacks getting to play. But you had some people who had such a love of the game and they wanted to play. And so Rube Foster created this league of 8 teams, and you had these incredible athletes who got to showcase their talents, and they would travel around the country playing these games, and they were known for being amazing. People would turn out in huge droves, white and blacks, to watch them play because they were so good. And yet they'd get on a train car. They had to have a special Pullman car just for them when they traveled around the country because they couldn't go stay in hotels. They couldn't eat at restaurants. Though they would go to these stadiums and play and people would come and marvel, they then couldn't eat in restaurants or stay in hotels. You really look back on our history of our country, and it's such a very sad commentary. It wasn't until April the 15th, 1947, Branch Rickey, who owned the Dodgers, was a man of great faith. He really believed in the greatest commandment, that you're supposed to love your neighbor, no exceptions. And so he wanted to break the color barrier. He didn't agree in this gentleman's agreement we wouldn't hire blacks. And so he took Jackie Robinson and gave him the opportunity to play in the National League. The first man to play in the National Negro League, who then got to play in Major League Baseball, April 15th, 1947. It was such a hard experience for Jackie Robinson, with all the outpouring, all the prejudice that was poured out against him. And yet with Branch Rickey's support, with his faith, he made it. By the way, Branch Rickey was a Methodist, and so was Jackie Robinson. They broke the color barrier, that racial divide. He crossed over the bridge from segregation to integration. And when he did, it suddenly opened the gates. When they saw how good he was, other teams wanted to compete with the best players they could find, and quite often the best player they could find was black. Other teams began to sign. The Dodgers not only signed Jackie Robinson, but also Roy Campanella. The Cleveland Indians would sign Larry Doby and Satchel Paige. The Giants would sign Willie Mays. The Braves would sign Hank Aaron. The Cubs, Ernie Banks. The Yankees, Elston Howard. And on and on. And soon you found one or two, three black players on a major league team. They still faced prejudice, and it was hard. But these were all men who played in the National Negro League and finally in Major League Baseball. Well, this is the 100th anniversary of the beginning of the National Negro League. People who played the game and gave their best and were able to showcase we can do this just as well as white people, in many cases far better. They showed their talent and their ability and their love of the game. And it helped us as a nation to take a step forward against segregation and into integration, and a step forward towards treating all people the same, loving your neighbor, no exception. Well, in honor of this 100th anniversary, they've created a program, and it's called Tipping Your Hat. They want to encourage people all across the country to take a moment to tip your hat to all of the people who played in the National Negro League. You see, there is a museum for the National Negro League in Kansas City, Missouri, and they're inviting people to send in photographs or videos of themselves tipping their hat to those people who played in such difficult circumstances, and yet they continued to play and truly helped to change our country and our world. The hat I'm wearing today is a Heritage Hall hat, because our son Paul went to Heritage Hall, and there he loved playing baseball. He was a part of a state championship team, and his skills playing there at Heritage Hall helped him to be able to go on to Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore, and there he played college baseball. Some of my favorite times in my life was being a baseball dad, getting to go and to watch him play, watching a state championship game, watching him in college. It was such great fun. We're a part of that tradition of baseball. And so it is today. I want to begin this week with a tip of the hat. A tip of the hat to some of those men who played in such an amazing way, and we're going to go back and look at them each day this week. I want you to know the story of Jackie Robinson, Satchel Paige, Willie Mays, and Hank Aaron. We're going to look at one each day and see what they went through as each one of those men played in the National Negro League and in Major League Baseball and are now a part of the Hall of Fame in Cooperstown. They were men of faith, they were men of skill and talent, and I want us to go back and to remember. So I start today with a tip of the hat. To all those who crossed that bridge, but also to all of those who built that bridge and never got the opportunity to take that trip. I want us to remember this week and to live out our faith. Love the Lord your God with your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. No exceptions. We're going to have a great week.